appreciate you all coming out this Saturday afternoon. I think you guys can be doing a lot more out there, whether it's your job, being at home with your kids, or being with your loved ones. So I appreciate you taking this time to come out here. And the thing about networking is it really starts with the type of action that you take. So you guys are actually so much more further along in your networking skills and capability because you are here today. You chose to come. You chose to come and learn something new. So I appreciate you all coming out today. I am currently the Director of Communications and Learning at the Stewart Foundation. The Stewart Foundation is a family foundation located in San Francisco. So I commute 3 days out of the week to San Francisco, and I work there. And then 2 days of the week I'm here in Sacramento. Prior to working at the Stewart Foundation, I was the Chief of Staff for Sac City Unified School District. I worked with 3 different superintendents in the last 4 years. And then at the same time, I was also their Chief Family and Communication Officer. I'll talk a little bit about my career path, just so that you can kind of track of where I've been and what I've learned. I am actually first immigrant / refugee generation. So I was actually 2 when I came to the United States. So I was part of the second wave of Hmong refugees. My parents came in 1982. I was only 2. We landed in Colorado. His family was there. Lived in Colorado for 2 years. I was 4, and then we moved here to California, and I've been here in California since then. I grew up with a family of 12. I'm one of 12 children. I have 6 brothers and 5 sisters. I'm right in the middle. So I had a couple of opportunities growing up. I had some siblings that went to college and really appreciated this ability to know that there was more beyond just high school. So for parents out there and for your young college students out there, college is such an important opportunity, and you should take all you can from that experience. And if you're a parent with small children, it's never too early to introduce college to their life. To show that there's more beyond just high school or elementary school, but to teach them that there's opportunities around college. Now, college is not the only choice, obviously, but it is always important to provide your children with some opportunities. When I graduated, I actually graduated from Luther Burbank in 1998. Had an opportunity to go to a couple of universities, but landed on going to University of Pacific. That was the university of not my choice, but of my compromise with my parents. I was the first daughter to go away to college, and back then, you don't do that. So all you young college students this year, nowadays, going away to college, that was an opportunity and a privilege that a lot of folks my age growing up, we didn't get. Going away to college was not heard of. It was shameful. It was something that not to be trusted, right? Especially if you're a young woman. So I compromised with my parents. I had lots of conversation with my older siblings and sisters and uncles, and told everyone to kind of help me convince my parents that it was okay to let me go away to college. It took a lot of convincing. I had opportunities to go to other universities, but UOP was the closest. So UOP gave me enough distance to get away from Sacramento, but close enough that my parents, I had an opportunity to still come home and do my daughter chores, right? My obligations. And also, in case my parents wanted to be able to check in on me, it was close enough for them to know that I wasn't too far away. And I think ultimately, when I reflect on those experience, I think it was more like, right? So if you go away, the only means and the only way that they can really support you is provide you with a home and food and safety. And to see that their kids are going to go away, it's really hard for them to then support you in any way. My family wasn't really rich. I mean, we lived in poverty. We grew up in poverty. And the thing about growing up poor is that you never know if you grew up poor, right? Because everyone around you is poor, right? So for me, I never knew that I was growing up in poverty. until I went to middle school. And I went to middle school, Rosa Parks, which was Gady. And back then, they had to bus the white kids from Pocket Road, like up from Green Haven, all right? And because there wasn't a middle school there, so they had to bus the white kids and the other Asian students to our school. And that was probably the first time I realized that I was poor, that other people had other means, and that maybe there was a different life for me. In junior high school, it was right around that age where, right? So, like, you either were a gangster or not and got beat up, right? Or you were kind of in between, right? And then for big y'all, Hmong women, we really didn't have a lot of options, right? Because then you either was a girlfriend of a gangster, right? Or you wanted to date other races, right? And so it was always kind of really hard, especially when you're a teenager at that age and you're trying to find your identity. So that was really hard, but then that taught me a lot about the fact that maybe there was a lot of perspective out there that I wasn't aware of, and that I started to have to be more socially aware of who I was and be comfortable with that, because that was going to be important. And that actually helped me through my high school years with the commitment that I wanted to go away to college, because that really made me know that I wanted to be in a different space, because if I was in a different space, maybe I can learn something new. And I knew it was going to be hard, but I still wanted to do it. And so that's important, because I'll talk a little bit about understanding yourself, when you're trying to network, and understanding why it's important to understand the context in which you are in. So I went to University of Pacific. I had a great opportunity there because at University of Pacific, they actually allow the undergraduate students to do research in the psychology department. So psychology was my major. I really wanted to understand the way people think and why people do the things they do. And psychology is the study of the mind. And so I majored in psychology, and in my junior year at University of Pacific, this new research came out, and there was a gentleman that was going to come and do a talk, and he was called Daniel Goleman, and Daniel Goleman actually did a research around emotional intelligence. And that just blew my mind away. Like, wow, okay, you don't have to be just intellectually smart, but you can also be very highly socially, emotionally intelligent. And that there's this other intelligence out there that a lot of people didn't understand. So I went to his talk, and he came and presented at the university, and I was like, wow, okay, social, emotional intelligence is so important. And especially if you are looking at psychology and the way people think, that led me to want to incorporate the learning into what was a new field that was kind of emerging. It was called organizational psychology. It's a component of organizational learning. So looking at organizations and growing, the individual people in the organization. And that was very interesting for me. And I actually I didn't switch my major, I did an emphasis in business management. So what I did with that was that I wanted to focus on really building and leading organizations, and so that kind of led me to a career path in working with nonprofits and designing and building and developing nonprofits. When I graduated from University of Pacific, I had an opportunity to do a work study project as a research assistant. And that position actually really opened my eyes up to working in the nonprofit field. So as a research evaluator, I provided data and information to nonprofits on how to report back their impact and outcomes. And that led me to an opportunity where one of the nonprofits that we were researching, their strategy around family resource centers and being a one-stop shop, that strategy actually became really highly sought out, and they ended up opening 5 family resource centers in San Joaquin County at that point in time. And they came and offered me the position to be their planning and evaluation director. At that point in time, I was only 22, and I was blown away But what really helped me in that position was this whole notion of how I built myself for the way in which people was perceiving me. Because I knew I was young, I was a female, and that I was Asian, all right? And so I had all three things against me when competing for these higher position. It was really important how I presented myself. And that led me to this opportunity of being their planning and evaluation director. I worked for them for 3 years, and then in 2005, the last wave of Hmong refugees were coming to the United States. And at that point in time, I really wanted to do something for my own community. I was doing a lot of work in developing high poverty communities. I was already working with the Hmong community, but it just wasn't satisfying because I was learning all these new skills and I was like leading, but I was building like county offices and other nonprofits, and I wasn't doing anything for my own community. And so I told my husband I was going to quit my job and come back to Sacramento and do something, right? I don't know what, but I just need to do something. And by then I had already built my network in Stockton, and I didn't want to lose all that, right? All that resource. And I was thinking, oh my gosh, what am I going to do, right? But again, as I explained this whole theory of success for you, you start to understand that you're not losing a network. You're actually taking your network and you're bringing it into a new space, and that you gotta see it from that lens so that people can see the value that you're bringing into this new space. So I was fortunate enough that Hmong Women's Heritage was looking for an executive director at that point in time, and had an opportunity to come on board as their executive director. And that was my dream job, being an executive director for a nonprofit, working with a Hmong community that focused on health, education, and youth development. That was just my dream job, and I loved that job. And I did the best I could, but then the economy was up against me, all right? So in 2008, the economy dipped, all right? And for a lot of you who weren't kind of really aware of what was happening, when the stock market crashed in 2008, a lot of things happened. The bank froze everyone's assets, all right? And so nonprofit, even though we were nonprofits, we had we had a lot of grants in our accounts that were above 500,000. So all that money wasn't insured. The accounts were only insured up to 250,000, and so that also created a whole another level of complexity that I really appreciated the training and experience that I had in some of my professional development around leadership and development and networking. It allowed me to go out there and really work with different people to find different ways to ensure that the agency continued to thrive. And then from there, I worked in Hmong Women's Heritage for about 3 years, and then was recruited to work at the school district as their Chief Family and Communication Officer. And I did that job for about 2 years, and then became their chief of staff for the next 2.5 years. And then the rest is history. I'm here. And I did all that, I want to say, within a 15-year span. So I was 22 when I became the director of a nonprofit, and then an executive director when I was 26, 27. And then became a chief, when I was 30. And each of those steps was possible because of the learnings that I learned. And so I'm going to give you guys some tips today, okay, about how to network so that you can actually achieve your desired result, okay? And that last piece, the desired result piece, is so important because I think a lot of people, when they go network, they forget why they're doing it, right? And so today I want to share a quick theory of success for y'all to take with you. This theory of success is actually something I learned from Dr. Daniel Kim. Dr. Daniel Kim is he taught at MIT in their social organizational learning department, and he is actually a student of Peter Senge. And the thing about why I'm sharing this in the book, The Fifth Element, all right, so The Fifth Discipline, The Art of Practice of Learning Organization by Peter Senge. It's important to understand complex systems, all right, and it's important to understand why you do things. And Peter Senge goes into explaining different frameworks that you can use to understand the world around you. Daniel, using the fifth discipline, came up with a theory of success that I tend to use when I'm networking. The first piece starts with the results, right? So everyone is networking because you are trying to achieve a certain result. So you're either trying to self-promote you, right? Or you have a product that you want to sell, right? Or you have a product that you want to create, right? So it's important for you to first understand what it is that you're trying to get. Now, when you go out and network, I'm sure a lot of people out there always tell you, oh, you know, that's great, you should go network, right? And you're thinking, okay, what does that mean? They go, you know, go meet people, right? And you're thinking like, okay, so the concept of networking, if you look at it from a relationship building perspective, it's actually going to help you a lot more. So the reason why you network is not to just know people, but to build and create relationship with them. And so it's not a one-time thing. It's actually an ongoing relationship building process. And so a lot of time you get the results and you kind of understand that, okay, I need to know what I'm looking for, and then I need to go find people to build a relationship with. But unless you understand the underlying aspect of what this means, you can keep networking and keep growing your relationship, but you may never get to improving the quality of your results. So you may know a lot of people, but they may not be able to help you create that particular product, right? You might meet a lot of people, but no one ever hires you, right? And you're thinking, okay, what's going on, right? I know a lot of people. So it's important to understand that the reason why you want to build strong relationship is that by building a stronger connection or relationship with someone, you're actually increasing your quality of collective thinking. And so this collective thinking comes about when you're working with someone or when you're constantly building that relationship with them. They're going to start improving the way you think, and you're going to start improving the way they think. And together, you're going to start thinking better. So this is that idea of a different perspective, a different experience that can help you with your particular result that you're doing. And then if you build your relationship and if you increase the quality of collective thinking together with folks, you actually improve your action, right? So the quality of action improves to then move you towards your result. So I'm going to give you that example about creating a product, right? So I have a product that I want people to buy or sell or promote, right? You're going to go and network. You know what it is that you're hoping to achieve, so you know your kind of speak when you're talking to people, right? You run into someone and you find out, well, maybe this person can help me with this. You build a relationship with that individual. That individual is going to give you some advice on your product that you're creating. You're going to go back and actually tweak your product a little bit based on their response, right? The thing about this relationship piece is that over time you start creating trust. You start creating a better understanding in that relationship, and that helps you with your product. And then together, the actions that you take changes. So again, you go and you think about it, but you actually come back and you change the way in which you're going to implement your action. And that improves your result. That gets you to have a better product where this networking opportunity actually increases the quality of your product over time. So this is one framework that I tend to use a lot. And the thing about this circle is that it is reinforcing, meaning the better quality result or quality relationship does improve the quality of the circle. And the mini cycles that you go through creates a better quality outcome. Now, the opposite is true as well. So if you have bad relationships, right, you'll also get bad collective thinking. And if you get bad collective thinking, your actions will always be bad. And therefore your results will be bad, and then it's going to impact that relationship again, right? Because it's never going to get better because all you got was bad results, right? So the opposite is true. So that's why it's so important that you focus on creating the positive quality relationship, and that's part of where the strategic, relationship building starts to happen. So that when you're short on time, right, you can actually then know who you need to network with. So I'm going to talk about, I talked a little bit about, why networking is important. Two other things I'm going to talk about next is about who you need to network with and how to do it well. Okay. So before I go, quick question. Any question about this? Okay. So I'm going to talk a little bit about, I talked a little bit about why it's important. Now it's about who you need to connect with. When I was 20, a book found me. So 15 years ago, this book found me. And I'm a big believer that people are not ready to read a book until the book finds you, right? And so when you actually find a good book, it's because there's something in the book wanting to tell you, okay? And so this book here, The Tipping Point by Malcolm Gladwell, how many of you read this book? Does anybody know this book? Okay, good. So The Tipping Point is that magic moment when an idea, trend, or social behavior crosses the threshold, tips, and then spread like wildfire. Okay, so it's just like a single sick person can start an epidemic of the flu. So that a small or precision-targeted push can also cause a fashion trend, the popularity of a new product, or a drop in the crime rate. So this book here taught me everything I needed to know about networking. There are 3 types of people that he talks about in the book that you want to network with. And it's not just type of people, but it's also the characteristics of what people have. The first one is he called a connector. The second one is called a maven. And the third one is called the salesman. Okay? So connectors are people who know people. Okay? And sometimes their relationship is not that tight, but they know people. Like, they just know people, right? They know so many people, and you're thinking, how do you know so many people, right? And then they also know all kinds of people. So it's not just one set of people, they kind of run in different set of groups, right? And, they may not be best friends with everyone, but they know people, okay? So there's connectors, okay? The other type of people are called mavens. And maven is actually a Yiddish word that means one who accumulates knowledge, okay? So mavens are your info, data-loving people, right? These are people who just know information and you have no idea why they know that, but they just know it, okay? They love information. They have an ability to retain unique data and unique information. They can, because of the fact that they love information and they can retain that, they tend to see trends, all right? So they can kind of forecast something. They're very connected to a lot of different type of resource and data points. Now, mavens are not persuaders, right? So if you're in a conversation with them, they'll just give you the facts. They won't actually try to persuade you one way or the other. They'll just tell you data, trends, information. Oh, did you know so-and-so, right? Or research, What is a persuader is this other category that he calls a salesman. Now, salesman, in this term, is not like a salesperson, like people who sell you things, they're just sell you things. But this is a persuader because people actually trust this person, right? Meaning they are passionate about what it is, the product that they're selling, and also passionate about the people that they're working with. And so salesmen, this characteristic of anyone, a person who can sell an idea, is because of the fact that they are well connected with both their product and their people, and that there's a strong trusting relationship in these salesmen. So when you're networking, those are 3 types of characteristics that you need to look for. Now, those are also 3 types of characteristics that you have to build within yourself. Okay, you gotta figure out how you can be a connector. You gotta figure out how you can be a maven in a particular item or area. You have to also be a really good salesman, meaning you gotta pay attention to the people that you're working with and the product that you're selling or the passion that you're moving forward with. And you gotta live that. And you gotta build that trust. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about how to do this well. Okay, my husband's holding the phone, but I can't see the time. Okay. 5 minutes. 5 minutes, okay. So I'm going to go through this kind of quickly, but if you guys have questions, I'll definitely be able to answer those questions. So how to do this well, right? So you know why you need to network, right? You know who to look for, and you know how to build your own internal, capacity to do this well. So the question is, how do you do this well? Well, we talked a little bit about the law of the few. So those three characteristics can actually tip an idea over, right? So it's important that you build your skills in those 3 areas and you look for people that have those type of particular characteristics that you want to connect with. The thing about the connector too is that the level of connection to a particular source is important. In the book, they talk about the 6 degrees of separation. How many of you guys know this term, 6 degrees of separation? Okay, and it was actually a game that some college students came up with where they were trying to figure out the number of connections before you get to Kevin Bacon, all right? And Kevin Bacon is a actor, all right? And they were sitting one day I think on their couch, and they were doing 6 degrees separation, like who acted with who then acted with Kevin Bacon, all right? And what they found out was in researching this, everyone is connected in the world through 6 degrees of separation. And that if you build your relationship connection again, the closer you are to a source, right? And a source or an influencer who can actually influence change or resources or make certain decision, all right? So I'll give you an example, all right? So all of you here today is actually 6 degrees separated from Kevin Bacon, okay? And I can prove it. All right, so my boss that I used to work with a long time ago, who we still kind of keep in touch with, all right, his wife, so my boss, his wife is the cousin of Adam Sandler's wife, right, so the cousin, who's married to Adam Sandler, who knows Kevin Bacon, all right? So I am 5 degrees separated from Kevin Bacon, which makes you guys all now, meaning me, 6 degrees from Kevin Bacon. Okay. Now, if I actually met my mentor's wife, so I can take him out of that, all right? And because she and I, we know of each other. We just know of each other, but we don't have a relationship, right? But if I build that relationship with her, I don't need my mentor boss guy anymore, right? Then my degree of separation to Kevin Bacon is actually 4 now, and you guys are 5. But if you build a relationship with me, all right, and you cultivate that relationship over time, you're actually a lot closer, because eventually one day you might meet the wife, right? And then now you don't need me anymore. You're 4 degrees closer to Kevin Bacon. This is actually really important when you are trying to get to someone of major influence, all right? You want to try to figure out your degrees of separation. The first thing you do is you identify how far away are you from this person. And you want to talk about where you want to start building that relationship, right? Because if you do your degrees of separation and you realize that you actually know someone who's number 3, all right? You want to start building a relationship with them, you know, in an authentic way, either as a connector or as a maven or as a salesperson, all right? You want to be able to build that relationship so that you can get closer to that influencer. Because the thing about the influencer is that they tend to be called power sneezer. So like when you're sick, right, and you sneeze on someone, all right, all those people get sick, all right? The next day they go and they sneeze on other people and they get sick, all right? So it's the same concept, is that you want to be able to reach that influencer so that your ideas can be contagious. And that's actually the number 2 tip around how to do this well, is that you want to have a stickiness factor, all right? So your message or your product or what it is that you're trying to push forward yourself have to have a stickiness to it. It has to be contagious, all right? So your message needs to be contagious. It has to be memorable, and it has to be relevant. The thing about memorable is that it doesn't have to be a good thing. So I'm going to share a personal experience. Years back, I had lunch with the chief of police in Stockton, all right? And I was sitting there with the chief of police and my boss, and we had a great lunch together. And I was kind of, young and shy, and didn't know what to say, right? So I just ate my lunch, right? And all that was done was an introduction, right? The next day, then we went to another event, and he met one of our site director. And it was a situation where the site director was really upset, and she was being very arrogant about the situation, right? But she was really upset, right? A couple months later, we met the chief of police again, and guess who he remembered? He remembered her, right? Not me. He remembered her, because she was memorable. You know, even though her attitude and behavior was not good, right? She was still memorable. So I just want to let you know that if you're ever in a situation where you're trying to network and you totally mess up, it's okay. Because you might have left a memorable impression where you can go back, okay, and actually fix that situation, okay? So just remember that too, that some people are memorable because of what they do. The third piece around how to do this well is that you actually want to also understand the context, the place and time in which the meeting occurs, okay? A good tip is that when you are at a networking event and you want to meet the guest speaker or a speaker, just know that if they're speaking that day, before they go up and speak, they are kind of focused on their speech, right? And so they tend to not remember anyone that they meet up until that point in time. So you want to wait and meet with them after they speak, right? So the context of that is important. If you're in a networking opportunity and everyone is Asian, right? You don't want to play the Asian card because then they won't remember you, right? Because you got to look around and say, okay, how am I going to be memorable, right? So it's important to understand the context of the meeting and the introduction. The introduction is also important. Sometimes it depends on who's introducing you to another person. Do you want to wait for someone else to introduce you because it's actually someone that will be highly trustworthy, and therefore because you're connected to them, this other person will suddenly just connect with you? Or is it best to approach this person alone because at this point in time, you will the benefits will outweigh that. So the context is very important. When you meet people, how you meet people, which hat you wear. So for me, I tend to always be careful about which hat I'm wearing. So if I'm here today, I'm putting my professional hat, right? And I'm putting my Hmong hat because we're all Hmong and we can relate that way, right? So it's important to understand which hat you wear and which hat you choose to not wear. So for example, if I'm meeting with politicians and all, I don't put my advocacy hat on unless I have to. I tend to put my civic a hat on, which is I'm a mother, I vote, I pay taxes, right? I put that hat on. And then I talk about issues that matter to me, which happens to be the same issue I would advocate for, but I'm putting on my mommy hat, my voter's hat on, and it means something different to them. So remember that context matters. I'm going to leave you with one more book that I think that I call it my Bible. And it's called The Art of War for Executives. It's a very small pamphlet. This is my Bible. This is the book that I read whenever I can read. When I'm going through a hard time, I go back and read this. It gives me the tips that I need to be successful as not only as a leader, but as a community supporter, as a mother. This book has helped me in many different ways. So The Art of War for Executive is another recommendation that I would provide you guys with. And I just want to make sure I cover all my points here. I think it's important to understand when you're networking. There's a quote that I always remember, and it goes something like this. A bird never worries about the strength of the branch that she lands on because she is confident in the strength of her wings. So I think that when you're networking, you gotta be confident first. You gotta know what it is that you want to push forward and what results you're trying to get to. You gotta also know what you're bringing. And that's
so I guess my first ask is would you be willing to be a little vulnerable in your experience as a networker? Would you be okay if I ask?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So with all great success, there comes learning opportunities and failures. Is there a time where you've had a major fail? What have you learned from it to get to where you are right now?
Yes. So I think ignorance is bliss. All right. So sometimes you actually thought that you did the right thing or you're meeting the right person, but then you go back and you realize that, oh my gosh, I spent that entire evening with the wrong person. All right. And I think that goes back to just understanding, what it is that you're trying to get out of in that situation, so that you're actually spending the right amount of time with people. There are also situations when you're networking and you don't network because of the context, again, all right? It's not a good time to network. There's nothing that you can actually bring to the table that will be contagious and memorable, and at this point in time, you're just there, and you're not gonna network. You're gonna acknowledge people, and that's the most you can do at that point in time. I'm trying to think of an example of when it didn't go too well, and I'm thinking, let's see here. Because the thing about networking is that it's not a failure, it's just not a success. Does that make sense? Right? Networking, it doesn't hurt if you just go and people see you, right? And people know who you are. There's no failure in that. It's just that it wasn't a successful use of your time if you're not if you're not getting anything out of that. And the other thing about networking is that networking gets you to building relationship, just so that you guys know the difference too. That you don't go network to build a relationship, you go network to find the right people to then follow up and build a relationship with. Because the networking and building a relationship actually happens at two separate points in time, right? So we're all networking today, right? What we do after today is the building the relationship part. And that's the part that's gonna help you with your result. So it's so important that you understand that if you want to see good success, so I guess that would be my example of a big failure, is not following up, right? And not building the relationship afterwards. And not, understanding the opportunity that was there that I missed. The other thing to know is that, and advice that I will always give everyone, is that everyone when you're networking, everyone actually brings a lot to the table. And if you always come with that frame of a reference and that lens, you actually get people to understand that they are an influencer and they didn't know that, right? Or that they're a connector, or that they're a maven, or that they're a salesperson, and they don't even know that, right? Because a lot of times people go network and they don't realize the assets that they bring to the table until someone tells them, or until they realize, wow, yeah, I should have seen that, right? An example was that I met this gentleman who was at our conference, the first conference we did, and he was saying, I just moved up from LA, and I don't know anyone in Sacramento, and I just want to network with people, all right? And I asked him, I was like, okay, well first, change the way you introduce yourself, okay? Because you want to say this. You want to say, I'm so glad I'm in Sacramento. Because, when I was in LA, I was able to do a lot of, partnership building, and I'm so excited that I'm here to share all those resources with you, right? Suddenly, you want to meet this guy, right? He knows LA, he has networks over there, right? Because the way he was presenting himself wasn't, a way in which, that people saw asset in him, but he had so many resources, and he just didn't know how to share that. So I think another piece around networking experience where it could have been better is that, there are times when people go into networking, and even me, and I forget that, the room is filled with people with assets that you can tap into, and you got to get them talking so that you can kind of find where those assets are. So one, not following up and building the relationship, and the other piece is not understanding that everyone in the house, actually has a strong asset to give. The other thing too is that it doesn't take a lot of people to make action happen, and that's the great thing about the tipping point. Okay, the tipping point says that it's the first thing is the law of the few. So if you have like 5 passionate people together in a room, and they start talking about what it is they want to do, that makes things happen. So it doesn't take big groups of powerful influencer. It actually takes, anywhere between 4 to 5 committed, passionate individuals to come together, to network, to start a wildfire. This tipping point piece talks a lot about that. It's the same thing about like fashion, all right? You get 5 committed people to dress a certain way, all right? And then they start meeting other people to dress a certain way, and suddenly, there it goes. That's a fashion trend. Because somewhere along the way, it hits, an influencer, and because they're an influencer, everyone else, the number tips over. And that's the whole point of the tipping point. And that's something for you to also remember when you're networking a product yourself, or, an idea, is that it's just a matter of the numbers and who you build your relationship with, and that bond between the connect. The closer you are to that influencer, the closer you are to your tipping point. Okay. Any other questions? Yes.
To clarify for myself, so I have a better understanding. So when you start talking, it's really about building a relationship, or connecting your passion with the other person and getting them to talk about their passion. So at that point, you're building a relationship. And then you're doing the collective thinking, because you're both interested in what the other person present or have, right?
Yes. So she was going back to just kind of reiterating the importance of why we go beyond just networking and relationship building. Is this important piece about the collective thinking piece becomes better. So yes, to answer that, because a lot of time people don't see networking as these things here, right? They only see, I'm gonna go build a relationship or I'm gonna go meet people and then that's gonna help me with my result. But really it's more than that. It's you go network, build a relationship, because once you build a relationship with someone, the quality of your thinking together improves, and when that happens, the quality of your action improves, and because of that, your results actually improve. You either get jobs, you get connected closer to people that are influencer, right? And you also start your action, the way in which you deliver your work becomes better. And a lot of time, that then improves, for me, when I think about that, that improves your ability to be a better salesperson, right? The salesman role, because you're passionate about your results, and then your customer or the person you're working with also believes in you and believes in the work that you're doing. And so then in a way, eventually, you actually become an influencer, right? And it elevates your kind of degree of separation, right? You become an influencer and people want to network with you. And ultimately, that's the other thing too. It's not just about you meeting other people who are influencer, but it's about building you so that you become an influencer, right? And that's through this process here.
I'm really excited to learn this today, and so that I can relax and the result will happen on its own. But I'm just having fun through the relationship, collective thinking, and that will move me to action, and I don't need to work on the result, and I can be more free, just enjoying.
But you have to have the result in mind, though. That's the thing. Yeah. First, start with the result in mind. Like, okay, I'm here because either I want to build more relationship, or I'm here because I have a product I want to share or an idea I want to share. So always start with that. And usually, the result in your instance that you're using is just passion. So I have this passion I want to share with. I want to meet other people who have similar passion to mine. I want to get their understanding and perspective on this, and build that stronger relationship so that when I am ready to do something around some action, all right, I've already cultivated those relationships to the point where your collective action and result will improve. Okay? Thanks. Any other questions? Okay. So I want you all to use your experience today, all right, and the tips that I gave you all, the tips are the three type of characteristics, and then the how to do it well is remember the law of the few, so it takes a few people to actually make things happen. The other thing is the stickiness point, so again, being contagious, memorable, relatable in your messaging, and then the third piece is context. Always remember the context that you're in. Which would mean, when you meet people, how you meet people, which hat you wear, when in that meeting do you introduce yourself, who you get to introduce you to this other person. Context plays a lot into successful networking. Okay? And I wanted to share with Anne that I'm doing part of the raffle. I'm actually going to do three young ladies that will be able to have 5 hours of personal coaching with me. So that's going to be part of the raffle, and if we can add that, and we can work on it later on. I can do an hour a month, or for 5 weeks, an hour a week, or a whole 5-hour session with you. So I do both professional coaching and personal coaching. So that's part of our raffle today. Okay?